All right, welcome in, guys. Farzi Masugian here with you for this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Appreciate you all joining me on a Monday. It's a gloomy Monday. The Tigers are out. The Jayhawks are out. So Kansas City is not really. Kansas City is not so thrilled right now with their college basketball teams. I mean, is anything. Like, you know what? I'll just say it. You know what I think of when I think of KU basketball? Okay, they got a championship a couple of years ago. By the way, I wrote a facetious comment saying that KU and Chiefs fans can't have nice things ever. Guys, learn to take a joke. Learn to chill out. But I made a comment also saying that KU basketball in the last 3 to 4 years, they remind me of Josh Allen in the playoffs. Can't get it done. Just can't get it done. But nonetheless, we've got some things to go over here on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. We're going to be talking about Travis Kelce. He has officially re-signed, and it is a 3-year deal worth $54 million, or at least that's what the media is trying to tell you. $57 million. It is a very misleading report regarding his contract situation. And I'll clarify all of that for you because some of you guys may not be aware of the contract details because the national media has done a pretty terrible job of reporting on this. But we'll get into all of that shortly. Also, I know I've asked this before, but I think it's worth diving into on this episode tonight. Is Kareem Hunt going to be brought back? And if so, when would that happen? I'm really curious to know when the Chiefs might bring him back. Also, I want to go over each position group and kind of go over whether or not the Chiefs view them as a priority for the upcoming draft and the remainder of free agency, essentially. Go over all of that here on this episode of the Chiefs Zone podcast. Appreciate you all joining me on this Monday. This is brought to you by SeatGeek. That's where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. You want to catch any of the NCAA tournament action that's remaining, Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four of the National Championship, and the next 2 weekends, or opening day is exactly 7 days from now. You can check that out as well. Or you want to just wait and get ready for Chiefs football, all you've got to do is check out my friends over at SeatGeek. That's where I go to for all of my sports ticketing needs. And if you're a new SeatGeek customer, enter my promo code FARZINE. That'll save you $20 off your first purchase from SeatGeek. Go to SeatGeek.com, get your tickets at checkout. Don't forget, enter my promo code FARZINE. That'll save you $20 off your first order from SeatGeek. Also, real quickly, do not forget, if you are in the Kansas City area, or if you will be in the Kansas City area, we are going to have our first ever Chiefs Zone live. 6 days away, less than a week. It is less than a week. It is hard to imagine. There it is right there. That'll be on Sunday, March the 29th at 2:30 p.m. And joining me will be Chiefs Hall of Famers Neil Smith and Duron Cherry. I know I said this to Duron last week when he was on the podcast, but I cannot thank these two enough for trusting me doing the first ever Chiefs Zone Live. It's always hard to want to get someone to be a part of your project, a really big project, for the first time that you're going to be doing it. Neil and Duron are super gracious, and they're going to be doing meet and greet, signing autographs, taking pictures, and all of that will be benefiting their foundations, the Derek Thomas and Neil Smith Third and Long Foundation, as well as the Duron Cherry Foundation. Every celebrity that will be there, William Shatner, Karen Ashley, so many others. Every celebrity will be charging for an autograph and a picture. So make sure you are aware of that. Bring cash and a credit card, because sometimes the credit card system can go down inside that venue at the Kansas City Convention Center. So just a heads up there. But nonetheless, I'm excited for this. I really hope you guys are as well. It is not too late to get tickets. Go to planetcomiccon.com to get your tickets. Like I said, this will be at the Kansas City Convention Center, part of Planet Comic Con Kansas City this upcoming weekend. And the Chiefs Zone Live will be on Sunday, March 29th at 2:30 p.m. I do want to give you guys a heads up. If you're going to be there all 3 days, great. If you want to be there just Sunday, there is the option to purchase tickets just for Sunday. And I will say this. Saturday is going to be insane. It is going to be chaos in downtown because of this event. Whenever they have the Big 12 tournament and Planet Comic-Con Kansas City at the same weekend, it is madness. It really is. Sunday won't be as crazy, but will still be very busy nonetheless. So if you don't want to get there right when doors open at 10 a.m. on Sunday, perfectly understandable. However, if you really, really, really want to be there for the Chiefs Zone Live, I do recommend getting there early as possible because parking can be absolute madness. If you get there earlier than expected, you guys can explore the vendor halls, check out some of the great artists. In fact, we had a local artist on last week, and Anthony Oropeza. He's got some great Chiefs art you guys can check out. I got to give a shout out to Chris Rao as well. He makes some great sports art as well. So if you get there a little early, explore the vendor hall. Plenty of time to kill if you get there a little early. You can always find things to do. So appreciate you all who will be there. It will be, again, this Sunday, 2:30 p.m. from the Kansas City Convention Center. All right, let's get right into it here. Donnie says Travis Kelce is washed up. Yes, Travis Kelce, who ranked top 6. And by the way, remind me Travis Kelce's age. I know his birthday is in October-ish. He's 30. He turned 36 during the season. So he put in all the work in the offseason last year to lose all that weight. And at 35, turning 36 during the season, he ranked top 6 in yards after the catch, receptions, and receiving yards. Look, let me just say this. If that is considered washed up, I've got nothing for you. I really don't. I think bringing Travis Kelce back, it was an important move for this Chiefs team. Look, I like Noah Gray in 2024 and what he did. I think he took a really big step back. And I don't know how much of it was the rest of the offense just not clicking the way it should have. I think the entire offense took a huge step back, even well before Patrick's injury. At one point, the Chiefs offense looked really, really good. But after winning 5 of 6 games, they only won 1 the rest of the year, and that was that Colts game. And they looked like a different football team. The offense just wasn't the offense wasn't operating as well as it should have, in my opinion. And listen, you guys know my thoughts on this. I know Hollywood Browns moved on with the Eagles. But when you look at the receiving core you had last year, yes, I know Xavier Worthy unexpectedly missed a couple of games due to that shoulder injury and fought through that all year long. Rice was suspended the first 6 games, but I still think you had enough to get through with Tyquan Thornton, with Hollywood Brown. Listen, I'll give Juju Smith-Schuster credit because I think he did a good job this past season filling in and playing a role he was not expected to play at all. I'm not saying let's bring him back and make him the top receiver or the number 2 receiver. No, not at all. He was thrust into an unexpected position. Jalen Royals, they barely used him last year when I thought he could have been somewhat of a contributor to the offense last year. But Travis Kelce, when a majority of it, and listen, Travis Kelce has some things to work on, especially holding on to the football, no question about it. I know the one that sticks out the most is that Eagles game, as well as the Commanders game where the ball went off his hands for a pick. Yes, it happened in the Texans game as well. And what I'll say about that one is I've seen Travis Kelce make that play. That's also a really difficult catch to make. I mean, you throw him that ball 10 times. Does he catch it every single time? No, he'll catch it a couple of times. It's not an easy play to make. But no, listen, Kelce has some things to work on. But if we're going to sit here and say he was washed up, I mean, what's the data to prove that? Kelce was on his way to 1,000 receiving yards last year, up until the Mahomes injury. I mean, Kelce had to play with Gardner Minshew for half a quarter because he got hurt. And then Chris Oladokun became your quarterback for the last, 2.5 games? Then it was Shane Buechele for the remainder of the second half in that season finale against the Raiders. I mean, there really wasn't an opportunity for Kelce to surpass 1,000 receiving yards once Mahomes got hurt. Once Mahomes got hurt in those last 3 games, how many touchdowns did the Chiefs score? Only 1. It was Chris Oladokun to Brashard Smith. I mean, Kelce looked better this past year than he did the previous year. The numbers are going to look similar, but you'll see a difference in the average. And his average, was pretty high at one point this year, but it dropped because the Chiefs were just throwing all the short passes because they didn't really have that deep pass threat anymore. Not that it was there entirely in the beginning, but somewhat was there with Mahomes. It just wasn't there with any of the other quarterbacks except for one play, and that was that 51-yard play from Buechele to Hollywood Brown. But anyway, my point is, because, EGE, that was a thing. This offense should have been better. And I do think with Eric Bieniemy coming back, I think that's going to make the offense much better. I truly believe that. And I've already gone over the numbers on this before, so I'm not going to go into it in detail. Chad O'Shea being your wide receivers coach, which is a massive upgrade over what you had previously at that position, that's going to help. And that's going to take pressure off Travis Kelce. And by the way, what else is going to take pressure off Travis Kelce? Having Kenneth Walker III, the reigning Super Bowl MVP, in the backfield. I mean, this is by far the best running back the Chiefs have put on the offense since Kareem Hunt's rookie season, when he led the league in rushing. So I'm excited for Kelce coming back. And by the way, let's go over the contract details, because everyone's up in arms about this. There are some Chiefs fans, because if you go to the NFL's social media account, they just straight up tell you that Kelce signed a 3-year deal worth $54 million, can go up to $57 million. Well, yeah, that sounds insane to give a 36, soon to be 37-year-old tight end during the season $18 million a year. But that's not what this is. What it really is a 1-year deal worth $12 million, could go up to $15 million with incentives included. Now, you might be wondering, so what is the purpose of a 3-year deal? The reason they're doing this is to spread out the cap hit, which is very smart on Brett Veach's part. And I think this is something they did with Deion Sanders' contract many years back. So essentially what this is, it's a 1-year deal for 2026 worth $12 million with a couple more million in incentives he can earn. And the next 2 years could essentially be void if they wanted to. If Kelce does want to come back, hey, I don't think the Chiefs are going to say no unless Kelce absolutely plays awful this year, which I do not anticipate. But if Kelce does want to continue playing after 2026, the deal will be renegotiated, plain and simple. He's not going to play on that hefty type of deal. He's just not. So listen, again, you go look at any of the national media, they're going to tell you it's a 3-year deal worth $54 million. That's not really what it is. Unfortunately, in the national media, we have a lot of lazy asses that don't want to clarify or explain the intricacies of a contract. I saw a Broncos fan get lit up by a bunch of Chiefs fans. And listen, to that Broncos fan's credit, he admitted he was not aware of these things. And I think Chiefs fans kind of, loosened up on the harsh comments. But you're confusing a lot of fans by not explaining the contract. Ian Rappaport, who I believe was the first to get in on the details of this, he sort of explained what it really is, but did a very lazy job of it. I'll give credit to Ari Mirov, I believe is how you say it. His handle is My Sports Update on social media. He's from the 33rd team. He actually did a really good job of clarifying and explaining the contract details. I know, generally speaking, contract details aren't too crazy. I mean, you'll get the information as it comes out. It's not going to be the exact same money you make every year if it's a multi-year deal. This one's really not that complicated either. It's just confusing because the national media decided to just say 3 years, $54 million. Here it is. Which they'll say, and I would not have an issue with Kelce making $18 million because he has been underpaid for a wide majority of his career. And by the way, there are 8 or 9 tight ends who are making more money than Travis Kelce. And again, he was top 6 in receptions, receiving yards, and yards after the catch. So I don't have a problem with this contract. Listen, if you think this is a bad contract, listen, that's your opinion, but there's not much to really explain other than what I've told you. This is actually a fairly good deal. I truly believe that. The only way it's going to look bad is if Kelce just absolutely plays horrendously, which again, I do not anticipate. He's done a pretty good job. Even not this past year, not 2025, but 2024, when Kelce had his lowest numbers, especially with yards after, yards per catch, he was still in the top 5 in receptions and receiving yards. Yeah, sure, you can say he's old, you can say he's washed up, but if he's washed up or if he quote unquote can't play, what does that say about a majority of the tight ends in the NFL now? Because Kelce's still putting up better numbers than a lot of tight ends out there at 36 and soon to be 37. So I view this as a really good deal for the Chiefs as well as for Travis Kelce. Now, before we go any further, you just look at the offense right now. What do you have? You have Tyquan Thornton, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy. And then for depth purposes, guys who are going to be competing for roster spots, you've got Jalen Royals, Nico Remigio, Jason Brownlee, Jimmy Holiday, Andrew Armstrong. That's your wide receiver room for now. And the running back position, and this one's really interesting too. You've got Kenneth Walker, you've got Imari DiMercado, Brashard Smith, Chandrick Powell, who's going to be competing for a roster spot. As far as the rest of the tight end position goes, you got Kelce, you got Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, who you drafted in the 4th round out of TCU a couple of years ago, Jake Briningstool, who had a fairly good preseason, certainly made some noise in the preseason, but didn't see much of that in the regular season. You also have Trey Watson, part of the tight end room as well. So when you look at those skill position players, looks fairly good. Not going to say it's great, still can be better, but I think with what you have, and look, the one hill I'm willing to fall on is I truly do believe that with Bieniemy, with O'Shea, I think that's going to help the offense a lot. I think with O'Shea coaching these wide receivers, Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, they've only had Connor Embry as their wide receivers coach, which isn't good. And now they're going to have someone who's won 3 Super Bowls, who, according to Gronk, and I think we'll take Gronk's word for it, is very much responsible for Julian Edelman's career. And by the way, what ended up happening to Julian Edelman? He won Super Bowl MVP for Super Bowl 53. And that was a very low-scoring game, too. Generally, a low-scoring game like that, the MVP would probably go to a defensive player. But because of the job he did coming through for Brady in that one, when neither offensive players were really stepping up, he came through when Brady needed him the most. So you've got that as your wide receivers coach. And I think that's going to give Mahomes more viable options. Like, I truly do believe that O'Shea is going to help Worthy, Rice, and Thornton mature and be better players. And I'm excited about that for Tyquan Thornton the most because he showed some great things those first 3 games. And I think that's only going to make him a better wide receiver and do more things that he maybe has not been good at in the past. Maybe some of Tyquan's weaknesses can become strengths moving forward for him. Because Tyquan's great with those deep pass plays, and we saw that last year torching those defenders, but he wasn't too big on those short, medium route plays. And that's where I think Chad O'Shea can really help Tyquan Thornton be a more complete wide receiver. I think Xavier Worthy, with the speed he possesses and the rookie season he had where he progressed as the season went on. And you could say the same about Rashee Rice's rookie season. That'll help those 2 guys out. Now, again, what's going to happen with Rashee Rice short-term and long-term, I have no idea. I've gone over this before, so I'm not going to go into detail. Short-term, I will just say I don't think he's getting suspended because there isn't any evidence of him doing anything wrong right now. The lawsuit could take a while, and by the time there's anything final on that front, he'll probably be a free agent by then. And the Chiefs will probably be in a position where they would prefer to move on. So that is Kansas City's offense right now in a nutshell. So let's go over this for a moment here, and I'll get to Kareem Hunt. Actually, let me get into Kareem Hunt now because I think that'd be better to discuss before we go over positional needs. Here's a question for you guys. Do you guys think Kareem Hunt will get re-signed by the Chiefs? And if you do think he will, when do you think that'll happen? Because right now, Kansas City obviously adding Kenneth Walker and Imari DiMercado. They also have Brashard Smith, who has a skill set very similar to DeMarcado's. Brett Veach was not kidding at the combine when he said he wants a more explosive running game. And when you compare the running backs right now to a year ago, you certainly have that. God forbid, if anything were to happen to Kenneth Walker injury-wise, well, you've got a couple of guys to rely on in DeMarcado and Smith to where they could maybe form a 1-2 duo and help manage things on the offensive front in the running back position. Not ideal, but that can work. Is there any room for Kareem Hunt? I'll be honest, I truly, like, even just asking this question myself, I don't really know. And if I don't really know, if I'm not so sure, it just made me realize even more, I don't know if Kareem Hunt's coming back. And I know I've said this already before, but I just feel like I just feel like with 9 draft picks, and will the Chiefs trade? Probably. So we'll see how many they end up with, whether it's 8, 10, a little more, a little less. We'll see. I just feel like Kareem Hunt has unfortunately put himself in a bad position to where, look, what was the longest run of the season for the Chiefs? It was 33 yards against Jacksonville. And by the way, Patrick Mahomes led the Chiefs in rushing yards for that game, scrambling yards, but you get the point. Like, the Chiefs' running game was not good. Patrick Mahomes led the Chiefs in rushing yards in 4 or 5 games. That's not good. Now, if Mahomes had a skill set very similar to Justin Fields with his scrambling abilities, I could say that's acceptable. But that's not the case. Yes, Mahomes runs. He runs fairly often at times. A lot of quarterbacks do it more today than they have 10, 15, 20 years ago. But the Chiefs' running game needs improvement. And I want to be very clear, Kareem Hunt brings a lot of value in the short yardage situations. It's been very well documented that Kareem Hunt on 3rd and short and 4th and short, he's more effective in those situations than the tush push. Because we all know how big of a deal the tush push is. Now, I will say, if the tush push does get banned, that probably raises Kareem Hunt's value by a lot. And I think teams will certainly be more interested in wanting to add Kareem Hunt. Now, for right now, he's still a free agent. Because I think Kareem Hunt can be a good number 2 running back somewhere. He's not what he once was. And listen, Kareem Hunt was never the fastest running back in the room ever. He never was. But he did a lot of other really good things that allowed him to be considered a top 5 running back early on in his NFL career. I know hasn't been the same since then, but the Chiefs brought him back for a reason. Yes, unexpected, especially with the unforeseen circumstances with the plethora of injuries the Chiefs had in 2024. But the Chiefs felt like he did all the right things, all the work he put in. And look, we haven't heard a peep about Kareem Hunt off the field. So it was the right move to bring him back for sure. But as far as Kareem Hunt's future with the Chiefs, I don't know. A lot of you guys are saying after the draft, and I don't necessarily disagree. If they are going to bring him back, it probably will be after the draft, which leads me to my next point here. Let's go over all the position groups, and let's talk about whether or not the Chiefs would seriously consider drafting anyone at this position in the NFL draft. Quarterback. I think the Chiefs like what they have in Mahomes, Fields, Oladokin, and Haener. Haener and Oladokin are probably going to be competing for the practice squad job. Justin Fields is your number 2. You don't trade a 6th-round pick for a quarterback and not keep him. Justin Fields is going to be your number 2 quarterback. Maybe the starting quarterback if Mahomes is not ready in week 1. It sounds like he will be ready, but Fields is a nice backup option to have on your team. The running back position. I'm just looking at the running back room right now with Walker, Smith, DeMarcado. That's a pretty solid group right there. Now, we haven't seen much of Smith in Kansas City. The most we saw from him, that was when the season was essentially gone and done with. Like, the season was far out of reach at that point. Walker, we know what he's capable of. That dude just had a monster postseason. DeMercado has not necessarily been a dominant running back, but he has had big flashes that will end up on a highlight reel. So there might be some room for Kareem Hunt, depending how the Chiefs want to utilize their running backs. And we've seen the Chiefs do that. Remember the Chicago Bears game, which, if I recall correctly, that's the last time the Chiefs scored 40 points in a game. I think it was 41 to be exact. That was also Taylor Swift's debut. I like to refer to it as Taylor Swift's debut. But in that game, what did you have? You had Isaiah Pacheco, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and Jerick McKinnon all score a touchdown in that game. If you remember in 2022, because that was 2023, in 2022, Isaiah Pacheco was your feature running back. And during the second half of the season, that's when you saw a lot more of Jerick McKinnon. And then you had Clyde Edwards-Helaire sprinkled in throughout the season here and there. So the Chiefs have been able to find ways to utilize multiple running backs in an offensive scheme. Oh, by the way, who was the offensive coordinator in 2022? Eric Bieniemy. And since then, with the exception of that Chicago Bears game, you haven't really seen the Chiefs utilize multiple running backs like that in a game ever. So the running back room looks very interesting, especially with Bieniemy coming back. I'll be honest, I don't think the Chiefs are going to draft a running back. I think some people are expecting that maybe in the 6th or 7th round, but I just don't see it. I don't think Kansas City has a lot of interest in a running back in this year's draft. So we'll see what ends up happening with that position group. Let's go to the wide receiver room. I mentioned earlier, Thornton, Worthy, Rice, Remigio, Brownlee, Royals, Armstrong, and Holiday. Depending on how the first 8 picks go, if Carnell Tate is the best player available, like if both edge guys, Bailey and Bain, are gone, if Maui Noah, and I know people don't want to hear this, but I truly do believe the Chiefs are eyeing a right tackle in this draft. And there are a lot of really good right tackles that could go either at 9 or should be available at 9 or 29. But if Carnell Tate happens to be there and the 2 edge guys are not, I think the Chiefs are not even going to think twice. They will draft Carnell Tate. I think he'd be a lot of fun to watch with Patrick Mahomes in this offense. If they don't draft a wide receiver in the first round, I think they'll certainly look for one in the later rounds. There might be some good ones available in rounds 3 or 4 when the Chiefs are up to pick. And look, I know all these draft boards are out there. We don't know how the media's draft boards compare to all these 32 teams. And these 32 teams, their draft boards will never be the same either. Looking at the rest of the offensive line. So the Chiefs have an interesting offensive line. By the way, I have a question for you guys. And I want you guys to discuss along with me. I want to know, what are your thoughts on this offensive line right now? Because for right now, the projected offensive line from left to right is Josh Simmons, Kingsley Suamataia, Creed Humphrey, Trey Smith, and Jalen Moore. Some of the key guys in terms of depth players, we all like what we saw from Masapole, right? Hunter Norzad, I think, is underrated. I remember Hunter Norzad played center after Creed Humphrey left after the first series of the game against the Broncos in Week 18. Hunter Norzad's snaps were low, but his pass blocking was good. And by the way, yes, the Chiefs put in their backups, but the Broncos, who have had the best defense the last couple of years, they still had their starters. And Hunter Norzad did pretty well against their interior defensive line. And against the Raiders, which I know is not the greatest measuring stick, but considering Norzad was once a day 3 draft pick and has never started a game before, he filled in for Trey Smith in that regular season finale and did fairly well there. I like what I've seen from Hunter Norzad as a pass blocker. I would love it if the Chiefs gave him an opportunity to compete for the left guard position, because I think Kingsley certainly showed some Kingsley Suamataia showed that he's a better left guard than a left tackle, and it is not even close. But I still think that left guard position needs to improve. Could Hunter Norzad be someone who they give an opportunity to? I don't know. They brought back Mike Caliendo. That was a surprise to me. They also have Wanya Morris. Wanya Morris has started some games for you. They converted him from left tackle to right tackle. So this might be his last year with the Chiefs. So we'll see what happens on that front. I think the Chiefs will look for a right tackle at some point in this draft. Francis Maui-Noah, if he's available at 9 and the edge guys are gone, Carnell Tate's gone, Caleb Downs is gone, I think Maui-Noah is not a bad pick at 9. I really don't. I know there's a lot of discourse on this amongst Chiefs fans. I think that's a big improvement for your right tackle position. I know Jalen Moore is making $15 million this season. I get that. But Jalen Moore didn't really look great when he played last year. That's the problem. So we'll see what the Chiefs do. And again, in later rounds, there are opportunities for right tackles. If you want to find one in the early part of rounds 3 or 4. Otherwise, if you get a right tackle later in the draft, it's probably more for depth purposes than anything else. Probably someone like CJ Hansen that doesn't play a whole lot. I'm curious what your thoughts are on the offensive line. If they draft one at 9, it has to be Maui-Noah. See, that's what I think. And again, I know drafting a right tackle is far from the sexiest thing you could do with the 9th pick of the draft. But I have this obsession of making sure Patrick Mahomes has the 5 best offensive linemen possible that could be on the field. Why was Trent Green so successful in Kansas City? Yes, he had Priest Holmes. Yes, he had Tony Gonzalez. Yes, he had Eddie Kennison, who I don't think truly got the recognition he deserved during his time as a Chief. But as far as the offensive line, I mean, you could not have found 5 better offensive linemen to play together. Will Shields, dude literally lived up to his last name. Willie Rowe was a monster offensive tackle. Brian Waters, he didn't really get recognized for his work until Shields and Rowe both retired. Casey Wakeman, criminally underrated in my opinion. I mean, they had a stout offensive line during Trent Green's time as a Chief. And I think that's a huge reason why Trent Green thrived, as well as Priest Holmes. So I'd like and listen, I know you're never, ever, ever going to replicate that offensive line. I know that. But what did Brett Veach say in a press conference last year? And I think it was a week before the draft. Veach made a comment saying that if we can even get 1% better in any position, we'll certainly go for it. And I think that's the mindset you have to have for a team that's been to so many Super Bowls and AFC Championship games and finally had their first down year under Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. That's always going to be the mindset. Yeah, sure, you've had a lot of great years, and this past year was your first bad year in a very long time, since 2012. And I think the mindset is now, okay, we're coming off a really disappointing season. How do we put this in the rearview mirror and make it a long distant memory and play much better? I'm obsessed with having an elite line of scrimmage. If you've seen some of my mock drafts, and I've had a couple that I've released, a Chiefs mock draft that is, one of my mock drafts, I am strongly in favor of the Chiefs getting either Bain or Bailey with the 9th pick, and then with the 29th pick, drafting a defensive tackle like Caleb Banks, Peter Woods, McDonald from Ohio State. And I think, yes, I know they got Kyrie Stonga, but I don't think there is such thing as too much depth anymore in the NFL today. I know you cannot have, a great 22 and a second set of a great 22. It's just not possible. But if you have a great defensive line and a great offensive line, I truly believe everything else will fall into place, as well as a great quarterback, which the Chiefs have in Patrick Mahomes. Everything else will fall into place. I still am a big believer in Chris Jones. I just feel like they don't have a strong, dominant presence right next to him like they did with Turk Wharton. They did have that briefly with Omar Norman Lott, but he had a couple of injury issues last year. Kyrie's Tonga is now in. It wouldn't hurt to have another key presence in the middle of that defensive line, as well as on the edge guy opposite of Karlaftis. Kyle says, I think we need a corner at 29. Listen, no disagreement there. I just feel like if you have a good defensive line, and by the way, Orland has a very good comment I want to get into, because he says both Super Bowl losses were because of our offensive line didn't play well. And yes, he's right. I mean, the first loss, you had a JV offensive line. And listen, we're all fools, because even the betting lines, because the Chiefs were still favored to win. People still thought the Chiefs would be fine because Mahomes is a magician and can do everything and he walks on water. Then we learned, okay, the dude does need help. Everyone needs help. Listen, even Brady needed help. Brady never had a bottom 10 defense, if I'm not mistaken. In fact, all of the 7 Super Bowl wins he's had was with a top 10 defense. Now, let me say this, to go back to Orland's comment about how the offensive line didn't play well, because you had the injuries the first time around. Second time around, you had Mike Caliendo playing at left guard. He just was not ready for the elite pass rushers. Joe Thuney was playing a position he wasn't ever really familiar with. But let me flip the coin on that. Let's say you do get Reuben Bain Jr. and you get Peter Woods with a 29th pick. And you have Kyrie Tonga, you have Omar Norman, you have Chris Jones, you have George Karlaftis, you have Ashton Gelati. What if you end up in a playoff game or even a Super Bowl to where the opposing team's offensive line is banged up? Oh, the luck gets flipped just like that. Kansas City would then feel the other side of that. And if you have a stout defensive line, guess what? They're going to go after the quarterback and give him a hard time. Now, the Patriots, why did they lose the Super Bowl? Bad offensive line play. But it wasn't because they had anyone missing or had guys playing in positions they shouldn't have played in. Will Campbell struggled immensely in this Super Bowl. And that Seahawks defensive line, which I don't think anyone ever talks about that defensive line, because all the attention was on Sam Darnold and Kenneth Walker with what he did in the postseason, rightfully so, but that defensive line did not get enough credit, in my opinion. I think if you can have luck on your side to where the opposing team has those injury issues, you're never going to apologize for it. Did the Buccaneers apologize for Mahomes having 5 backup offensive linemen? Did the Eagles apologize for the issues the Chiefs had with their offensive line? Hell no. You never apologize when your opponents are dealing with injuries or have players missing. Never. That is because if you don't take advantage of that, somebody else will. Kyle says I question Jalen Moore, but I'm sure Veach could find a diamond in the rough like he did with Trey Smith. And yes, it's very hard to do. And I think that's why you kept Trey Smith, because, dude, you're not going to find another guy in the 6th round. The Chiefs have been kind of fortunate. I thought they had a couple of solid 6th round picks a few years back in Zach Fulton and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. But man, they got Trey Smith way outside of the 1st round. They got Creed Humphrey outside of the 1st round. They've been very fortunate in finding guys outside of the 1st round. And Josh Simmons, they got very lucky with him falling to 32. If you get Maui Noah, it's not a bad pick at 9. I know Spencer Fano on some mock drafts, he's projected to go in the top 10, and in other mock drafts, he's supposed to go in the 20s. I don't know if Spencer Fano is worth taking at 9. I think he's going to have a good career. Do you take him at 9? I don't know if no one's willing to trade back with you. And if you truly believe in that kid, sure, you take him at 9, if you will. Listen, the teams are the ones doing the evaluating, the scouting. They're the ones talking to these players. We're not. We can only go off what we saw at the scouting combine, what we saw from their college games, and basically the reports that come out about them through the media. Brad says, is Zion Young, the edge from Mizzou, at 29? Is that too high? Yes, I think so. I think he can be available at 40. It'll be kind of close there. Like if you really, really want Zion Young, then you probably should take him at 29. But if you're confident he'll be there at 40, sure. But here's the other part of it too. If Ruben Bain Jr. is there at 9, you obviously take him. And I think, Zion Young at that point is probably not someone that's going to be on Kansas City's radar. And I get it. He's a Mizzou guy. So a lot of people naturally who are Mizzou fans are going to have a lot of interest in wanting to see him go from Columbia to Kansas City, which is just a couple of hours away. Maybe a little less than that. I don't know. So I think, Boye Mafe, I believe, did sign with the Bengals. Yeah, he's with the Bengals. Bengals are actually having a solid free agency, but we'll see if that translates into anything. Kind of like with the Raiders. Raiders have been active too, but we've seen that in the past as well with the Raiders. All right, so that's the offensive side. I think they'll draft one offensive lineman. It would be a right tackle, is my guess. Now let's go to the defensive side. Obviously, edge is a need. They would probably draft 1, maybe 2 edge rushers. They'll probably draft 1 defensive tackle. Because you drafted 1 in the second round last year. You just signed Kyrie's Tonga. Mike Pennell's probably not coming back. Linebackers. Do you guys think the Chiefs are going to touch the linebacker position in the first 3 rounds of the first 2 days, essentially? I don't think so. Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton, Jeffrey Bossa, who I know they really like. They also brought back Jack Cochran, Cole Christensen. I mean, those guys have been around for a few years now. For guys who were both undrafted free agents a couple of years back, they've been around the team a long time now. Cooper McDonald, who Dave Tope did say is their highest rated special teams player. I think the Chiefs feel pretty comfortable with their linebacker room. Would they draft one in day 3? Possibly, for special teams purposes. I won't dismiss that possibility. But man, I think Kansas City's pretty full on with our linebackers, even with the loss of Leo Chenal, because I do think Jeffrey Bossa would probably fill and take over his spot on defense, as well as special teams. Secondary, this is the more interesting one, because if there's anything negative that's been documented about Kansas City's offseason so far, it's that they've lost a lot of players in the secondary. They traded Trent McDuffie. Josh Williams moved on to Tennessee. Jalen Watson joined McDuffie in LA with the Rams. Brian Cook went to the Bengals. So who do you have? You have Noah Williams, who you drafted last year, led college football defenders and interceptions his last year there. And from the little that we saw from Noel Williams when the season was still alive, he looked pretty damn good. And the complaint was, why is he not getting enough playing time? He got a lot of playing time those last 3 games. Him and Christian Fulton they both looked pretty good. And Duron Cherry kind of chimed in on that last week when we had him on the podcast. You got Alohi Gilman. I don't know if Alohi Gilman I would call a good starting safety in the NFL. He's certainly good for depth purposes. Do you guys remember John McGraw, the former K-State Wildcat? Played for Kansas City for a couple of years. I thought John McGraw was underappreciated, in my opinion. I know he was not on a lot of good Kansas City teams, except for 2010. But John McGraw, I thought was a good backup safety who was fairly active in rotation. I think Alohi Gilman can be very similar to a John McGraw type of football player. They also got Kader Kohu, who I think is a good addition to replace Trent McDuffie. Look, how the hell do you replace Trent McDuffie? You don't. You just don't. That's like, when Joe Montana retired, you say, okay, how do we replace Joe Montana? You don't. When the day comes for the Chiefs to replace Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes, you can't ever replace those guys. You just can't. I think, in New England, they've kind of learned that how difficult it was. They had to draft a couple of quarterbacks in the first round before they finally found their guy. They even got a former league MVP, and it didn't work out at one point. It's not easy to ever fill in for an elite player like Trent McDuffie. But Kohu is a guy who's played some really good nickelback in the past, and he's been one of the better blitzing cornerbacks as well over the years. He's coming off a torn ACL, so he didn't play last year because it happened in training camp. Kevin Knowles has done some good things on special teams. Shamari Connor. I like Shamari Connor his rookie season when he played as a safety, but when he made that transition to playing some cornerback, I wasn't too big of a fan of his. I think he's a hard hitter. I don't want to get hit by Shamari Connor, but his coverage has certainly been an issue. Jaden Hicks. This is a very interesting name here. Jaden Hicks got a lot of hype when he got drafted in the 4th round, and a lot of people felt like he should have been drafted much sooner. But we haven't seen Hicks get much playing time because his rookie season, he was behind Justin Reed and Brian Cook. Brian Cook was still ahead of him on the depth chart. I thought Jaden Hicks was going to get more playing time last year, but it was kind of up and down with some of the other young guys like Thornton, Noah Williams. You get the idea. Yeah, it was just a weird year for the Chiefs last year with playing time for the younger guys. I think Hicks can be a good football player in the NFL. I think he can be a very good safety, but you got to give him a full season to find out. I think Jaden Hicks needs to have an impressive offseason with OTAs and training camp. And yes, I consider training camp part of the offseason. Because I think he's got to show that he can start 16 or 17 games for you. Now, I still think the Chiefs are going to go get 3, maybe 4, maybe 5 defensive backs in this upcoming draft. They had 5 4 years ago when they got all those guys I mentioned who've moved on: Cook, McDuffie, Williams, Watson. We still don't know if Najee Johnson's coming back right now. I know he brings a lot of value with his speed, being a blitzer, but for now he's still a free agent. So I could see the Chiefs getting at least minimum 3 defensive backs in this upcoming draft. Special teams, they brought back Ariza. They still have Butker. They brought back Winchester. I don't think they're touching that position. Would they try to find someone better than Nico Remigio? Maybe. Remigio had a couple of really good returns in the postseason a couple of years back, but we haven't seen that same Remigio since then. And I know they put Rashard Smith and Tyquan Thornton back there. Nothing's really worked. So I'm curious to see if the Chiefs try to eye a returner in this draft that could compete with Remigio. Who was the Dolphins cornerback? Yeah, that was Kader Kohu, Kyle. That's who I was going over. Brian says we have several positions of need, just need a great player. Yeah, and I feel that way at all. I feel like I think you need far more depth on the defensive side than the offensive side, because you've had a lot of losses these last couple of years. Justin Reed, Turk Warden, Mike Pennell, who I think has been underrated for Kansas City's defensive line. McDuffie, Cook, Watson, Williams. You've got a lot of guys that have moved on from this defense. Chanel, I forgot. So I think there is going to be an emphasis to try to create good depth, because if you can get a defensive end, guess what? Your edge rushers are now Ashton Gelati, George Karlaftis, possibly Reuben Bain Jr., maybe Zion Young. I know we've talked about that on this podcast. Listen, I guess for as long as he's still on the team, Felix Anudike-Uzomah still has a chance. I know he got hurt last year in the preseason, but he's still got an opportunity if he steps up this upcoming season. Ethan Downs, I think the Chiefs saw some good things from him last year. Ethan Downs almost cost the Chiefs 2 draft picks with that forced fumble on special teams last year in the game against the Raiders. So we'll see what the Chiefs do on the defensive line. Because if you add a defensive end and a defensive tackle early in the draft, you're going to have a pretty good group of football players on that defensive line, both with your starting 4 and your 4 backups, in my opinion. I think you can create a really good group of defensive linemen with your starters and your depth guys. And I think you're certainly going to look for a lot of depth in your secondary as well. That's why I'm big on the Chiefs not drafting a linebacker, because I think they've got their main guys in Bolton and Tranquil. Bossa will get more playing time on defense, and your main special teams guys are Jack Cochran, Cole Christensen, Cooper McDonald. I know a lot of people aren't a big fan of Jack Cochran because he had a lot of holding penalties last year, but obviously the Chiefs saw some value in him to the point where they felt like they had to bring him back. So I think that I really, if I had to bet, do they draft a linebacker? I don't think so. Even if a guy like Sonny Styles somehow falls to you, or Arvell Reese, both Ohio State guys, a lot of Ohio State guys are going to go in the first round, by the way. I still don't think you touch that position. I really don't. So that is the positional needs, the key positional needs. I don't think it's running back, definitely not quarterback. Tight end, I won't say no. I think you can find a guy like Michael Trigg in the third round. That would be good. A right tackle, yes. Wide receiver, yes. And I don't think you need much on offense. I really don't. But it's mostly your defensive line and your secondary that you've really got to focus in on for the remainder of the offseason with free agency and the draft. Trey says, could we trade down and gain additional draft picks? It's funny you asked that because I put out a mock scenario, and let me see if I can actually pull that up. Apologies. I don't know if you guys can hear that. There are a couple of dogs barking in the. So there's a window right here facing my backyard, but also my neighbor's backyard, and there are dogs on the other side of that house. They love to bark. I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm probably just giving you guys information you did not even know. I'm trying to look for something. Bear with me. I was going to pull up the image. I'll just go through my Facebook page and pull it up here because I do have a scenario that I did bring up, a hypothetical, but still something worth considering. If the first 8 picks look exactly, oh, you can't hear it? Great. But to get into Trey's question, if the first 8 picks look like this, in no particular order, obviously Mendoza's going 1, but if Arvell Reese, Jeremiah Love, Sonny Styles, Reuben Bain Jr., David Bailey, Caleb Downs, and Carnell Tate, if those guys all go off the board from picks 2 through 8, what do you do? Because your best player on the board that's available is Francis Mauigoa, followed by Mansour Deline, Dylan Thieneman, Spencer Fano, Monroe Freeling, Kenyon Sadiq, who a lot of Chiefs fans are kind of high on. Like, what do you do in this point? I say you draft Francis Mauigoa. A lot of people, however, said that it'd be wise to trade back. Because here's my thing. If the Chiefs don't draft Mauigoa, I think Cincinnati absolutely will. Because we all know Joe Burrow needs help on that offensive line. I know they drafted, who was it? Nick Wright projected him to come to the Chiefs, and I was really, Arvin Mims, I think is his name. That dude gets hurt a lot. So I think if those 8 players, not named Mendoza, if they go off the board, then yeah, I think Kansas City would either settle for Mauigoa if they feel like he's a serious upgrade at right tackle, or they trade back. That is an option. And listen, when you own the 9th pick, depending how far up someone wants to trade up, you can get some serious draft capital in return. Because think about this as well. There are 5 teams that have 2 first-round draft picks. The Chiefs are one of those 5 teams, which also means that there are 5 teams that don't have a first-round draft pick. And if there's someone they really want at 9, you can demand a lot in return. So that's something to consider if you're Brett Veach and the Kansas City Chiefs. Before I get out of here, I do want to piggyback off something that Jeff wrote. So for those who don't know, and this is completely unrelated to the Chiefs, unrelated to the NFL, football, sports in general, but it is worth discussing on here because I mentioned Turk Wharton's name a couple of times on here. Turk Wharton shared some heartbreaking news over the weekend. He mentioned that his brother took his own life. And I think a lot of times when it comes to this topic of mental health, especially men in general, add in the fact if you're a professional athlete, mental health makes you not look like a macho man anymore. It makes you look weak. And that could not be the furthest thing from the truth. And I apologize, I don't have his name in front of me, but there's a Dallas Cowboys player who took his own life during a car chase with the police over the weekend. Or, I'm sorry, this past season, rather. And, you know, people have been bringing up the topic of mental health and what can be done. Listen, I had a classmate my senior year of high school who took his own life. Just after first period, I think it was, decided to leave the building, got in his car and drove it into one of those highway pillars that was holding a bridge. And no one should ever, no one ever, whether you're a young kid who's got their entire life ahead of them or you're an adult, no one should ever have to feel the need to do that. And so Turk Wharton was encouraging people to check in on your friends, check in on people. And oh, see, we got hit with the warning on TikTok regarding this topic here, which is why I'm trying to be careful of this subject here in terms of certain words you use. But yeah, I mean, look out for people. And if you're one of those people who is struggling, do not be afraid to speak up. Speak to someone. And maybe you're in a position where you don't have a lot of people in your life to speak to. There is a number you can call, and that number is 988. That is the crisis hotline number, 988. And let me just get the correct website on here. It is the crisis lifeline. I should phrase it correctly. It is 988lifeline.org. 988lifeline.org, or call the number 988. So listen, if there's anything good that can come out of this podcast, and that is to encourage someone who's struggling, or if you know someone who's struggling, to call that number, hey, I'll consider that a success with this for sure. So think about that, because we've seen it in Kansas City, unfortunately, with professional athletes, specifically with Javon Belcher. That was a very tragic week, and certainly one that brought a lot of questions. And we continue to see it, unfortunately, in the NFL. Listen, you could still be an NFL player, or you can have a relative in the NFL. Doesn't mean you don't have life problems. Everyone has problems. But it also matters, how you handle it and approach it. And if you need help handling it the right way, as Jennifer says, asking for help is the strongest thing you can do. And I agree with that. So definitely wanted to get that out there, because that was a pretty tragic story from Treshaun Wharton, who no one should ever have to share that about their brother, their best friend, the guy who they grew up with. My brother and I are incredibly close, and just reading that was heartbreaking for me just to read. So I encourage any of you, if you're struggling, call that number again, 988, or if you know someone that needs help, 988 or 988lifeline.org. All right, that'll do it for this episode of the Chiefs Zone Podcast. My name is Farzi Vasugian. I appreciate you all joining me tonight. If you enjoyed any part of this podcast, please give it a like, give it a share, let your friends know about the Chiefs Zone Podcast. Subscribe to the Chiefs Zone on YouTube. If you miss any part of this podcast, it will be archived very shortly on Facebook, YouTube, X, Apple, Spotify, anywhere where you can download and listen to a podcast. And a reminder, this Sunday, the first ever Chiefs Zone Live will take place at Planet Comic-Con, Kansas City, at the Kansas City Convention Center. It'll be at 2:30 p.m. And joining me for that one, Chiefs Hall of Famers Neil Smith and Duron Cherry. I've said it many times, and I will continue to say it, because it truly does mean a lot to me. I cannot thank these two enough for joining me on this one. They're going to be doing the Chiefs Zone live with me. But before that, and after the live podcast, they'll be doing a meet and greet. They'll be signing autographs, taking pictures for a fee. Every celebrity at Planet Comic-Con Kansas City will be charging for a fee. Bring credit card and cash, just in case the credit card system goes down. That does happen. But nonetheless, it will be a great time. So I hope you guys can make it. I'm excited for this one. It's, again, the first ever Chiefs Zone Live with Planet Comic-Con Kansas City, and that'll take place at the Kansas City Convention Center. And you can see the room number right there, 2502A. That is the panel room that we will be in. And again, that'll be on Sunday. Neil and Duron will only be there on Sunday, so just a heads up there. And that Chiefs Zone Live will take place 2:30 p.m. All right. Once again, I'm Farzin Vasugian. Thank you all for joining me tonight. I will talk to you all on Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central. Take care.